You think you know tough trucks? Think again. We are talking about vehicles that defy the laws of physics and common sense. We are not talking about your average pickup truck. We are diving into the history books to find the absolute weirdest, most powerful, and frankly the most insane military machines ever built. From a Soviet monster powered by two separate engines to a massive American snow cruiser that failed miserably, and a truck that can literally drive over a human being without crushing them. Before we start, smash that subscribe button right now so you never miss out on the world's most insane engineering secrets. Let's kick things off with a piece of Soviet madness, the ZIL-135. At first glance, it looks like a standard 8-wheeled missile carrier, but under the hood, this thing is completely bizarre. Unlike almost every other truck in the world, the ZIL-135 doesn't have one engine, it has two. That's right, it is powered by two separate 7.0-liter V8 gasoline engines. One engine powers the wheels on the left side and the other powers the right side. This strange setup was designed for ultimate redundancy during the height of the Cold War. The engineering weirdness doesn't stop at the drivetrain. Take a look at the wheel arrangement. The front and rear axles steer in opposite directions, while the two middle axles are completely fixed. This allowed this massive vehicle to have a turning radius much tighter than you would expect for something the size of a small house. However, keeping the two engines synchronized was a nightmare for mechanics. If one engine revved higher than the other, the truck would literally try to turn itself while driving straight, fighting the driver every inch of the way. Despite the complex controls, it was an undeniably impressive piece of engineering that served as the launch pad for the famous Frog 7 missiles. But it came at a cost. The ZIL-135 drank fuel like it was free water. It consumed roughly 3 miles per gallon, which is absolutely terrible by modern standards. It was a thirsty, complicated, but fascinating beast. It represents an era where Soviet engineers prioritized raw capability and survival over efficiency or driver comfort, creating a machine that is still remembered today for its unique twin-heart design. Next up is a legend that Russian truck drivers still talk about with fear and respect, the KrAZ-255B. In the Soviet Union, they nicknamed it Laptezhnik, which refers to a traditional woven bast shoe. Why did it get this name? Because of its exceptionally wide, massive tires designed to float over soft ground. This 6x6 monster wasn't built for comfort. It was built to conquer the impassable mud of Siberia where paved roads simply did not exist. It is a symbol of brute force solving logistical problems. The heart of this beast is a massive 14.9-liter V8 diesel engine, producing nearly 660 pound-feet of torque. It is not fast. Top speed is maybe 45 miles per hour downhill, but it is virtually unstoppable. The frame is built from heavy-duty tempered steel, making it incredibly robust. Drivers often joke that you don't drive a KrAZ, you wrestle with it. The steering wheel requires serious muscle, and the cabin is essentially a wooden frame covered in sheet metal. It is loud, hot, and vibrates enough to shake your fillings loose. But its legacy is undeniable. The 255B could haul over 16,000 pounds of cargo through swamps that would swallow a modern tank. It features a central tire inflation system, allowing the driver to lower the tire pressure from the cab to float over sand or soft snow. Even today, you can find these dinosaurs working in the deep forests of Ukraine and Russia, doing jobs that modern trucks simply can't handle. It proves that sometimes you don't need high technology, you just need massive tires and unbreakable iron. Before the famous 255B, there was the grandfather of brute force, the KrAZ-214. Introduced in the late 1950s, this was the machine that set the standard for Soviet heavy haulers. While it looks similar to its successor, the 214 was a completely different animal mechanically, and it was even harder to operate. This truck represents an era where driver comfort wasn't just low priority, it was non-existent. It was designed purely for utility, meant to drag artillery pieces and heavy equipment through the deepest mud imaginable. The most distinct feature of the KrAZ-214 was its engine, the KrAZ-206. This was a two-stroke inline-six diesel engine. Two-stroke diesels are famous for two things: making a distinct screaming noise and producing thick black smoke. If you see a vintage video of a truck laying down a smokescreen while climbing a hill, it is probably a 214. Interestingly, this engine design was actually based on an American GM design from World War II, reverse-engineered by the Soviets to power their post-war reconstruction efforts. Driving the 214 was a genuine physical workout. The early models had absolutely no power steering. Imagine trying to turn the wheels of a fully loaded 6x6 military truck on a muddy road using only your biceps. It was brutal and exhausting work. The suspension consisted of stiff leaf springs that transmitted every pebble on the road directly to the driver's spine. Yet, despite its crude nature, the 214 was beloved for its simplicity. It had no complex electronics to fail, just iron, oil, and diesel. Let's move to Czechoslovakia to meet a truck that defies logic, the Praga V3S. Locals affectionately call it the V3S. It is ugly, it is noisy, and it is painfully slow, but it is widely considered one of the best off-road trucks ever made. Produced for nearly 40 years, this truck has a secret weapon that modern trucks still envy: portal axles. This engineering choice defines the entire character of the vehicle, making it look slightly awkward but performing miracles when the pavement ends. Portal axles mean the axle tube sits above the center of the wheel hub, connected by reduction gears. This gives the Praga massive ground clearance without needing huge tires. It can straddle boulders and tree stumps that would rip the undercarriage out of a Jeep or a Humvee. The design is so effective that the V3S could outperform much larger 6x6 trucks in rough, rocky terrain. It was the mountain goat of military logistics, able to deliver supplies to remote outposts that were otherwise inaccessible. The engine, however, is a different story. It uses an air-cooled Tatra-designed diesel engine. Being air-cooled means there is no radiator to puncture and no coolant to boil over, which is great for combat. But the downside is the noise. Inside the cabin, the engine sits right between the driver and passenger, covered by a thin metal hood. The sound is deafening. Top speed is a slow 37 miles per hour. But speed wasn't the point. It was built to go anywhere, and it did that perfectly. If the Praga is a mountain goat, the Tatra 111 is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the World War II era. This truck is a legend, literally. There is actually a monument dedicated to this truck in Siberia because it was instrumental in building the infrastructure of the Russian Far East. The Tatra 111 introduced the world to the genius of Czech engineering, the central backbone tube chassis. This unique design philosophy would go on to define the Tatra brand for decades to come. Unlike a traditional ladder frame that twists and bends, the Tatra uses a rigid central tube that houses the driveshaft. The axles are swing axles that move independently. This means one wheel can be deep in a ditch while the other is up on a rock, and the truck remains perfectly stable. It looks weird when you see it driving unloaded. The wheels tilt inward like it is broken, but once it is loaded, they straighten out for maximum traction. This allowed it to carry massive loads over truly terrible terrain. Powering this legend was a massive air-cooled V12 diesel engine. Again, air cooling meant it could operate in the freezing -40-degree Siberian winters without the block cracking, and in the scorching summers without overheating. The Tatra 111 was so robust that many of them ran for decades with minimal maintenance. It wasn't just a truck, it was the machine that literally rebuilt Central and Eastern Europe after the war. Its durability is a testament to engineering that prioritized function over form. Now for something completely different. This is the LuAZ 967, and it might be the strangest military vehicle ever to enter mass production. It was designed for the Soviet airborne forces with a very specific grim purpose: evacuating wounded soldiers from the front line. It is amphibious, air-droppable, and incredibly small. But the weirdest feature is undoubtedly the driving position. This tiny machine was built to save lives in conditions where standing up meant getting shot. The steering column folds down and the seat reclines flat. This allows the driver to operate the vehicle while lying on their back. Why? So they can drive through a battlefield under heavy machine gun fire without getting hit. The vehicle has such a low profile that it can hide in tall grass. It is essentially a motorized armored stretcher that can swim across rivers. It features a center driving position with space on the sides for 2 stretchers for the wounded. Mechanically, it is quite humble. It is powered by a tiny air-cooled V4 engine taken from a ZAZ economy car. It is not fast and it offers zero protection against mines, but its off-road capability is shocking. Because it is so light, it floats over mud that sinks heavy tanks. It was a terrifyingly clever solution to a very specific problem of war. While it looks like a toy, the Luaz 967 saved countless lives by being able to go where no ambulance dared to tread. We head to the USA now for one of the most ambitious failures in engineering history, the Antarctic snow cruiser. Built in 1939 for Admiral Byrd's expedition to the South Pole, this thing was massive. It was 55 feet long, weighed 75,000 pounds, and carried a Beechcraft airplane on its roof. It was designed to be a completely self-sufficient mobile research base, complete with living quarters, a dark room, and a machine shop for the crew to survive in isolation. On paper, it looked like the future. It had a diesel-electric hybrid powertrain, decades before the Prius, where diesel engines powered electric motors located in the wheels. But the designers made one fatal, colossal mistake: the tires. They used massive, smooth balloon tires intended for swamp buggies, thinking they would float over the snow. They didn't have any tread. This oversight would doom the entire project before it really even began, turning a $1 million dream into a frozen nightmare. When it arrived in Antarctica, the moment it drove off the ship, it sank deep into the snow. The smooth tires just spun helplessly, finding zero traction. The crew realized the cruiser actually drove better backwards, but even then it was useless. It moved only a few miles before being abandoned. It sat there for years, eventually getting buried by ice and snow. Today, its location is lost, buried somewhere under the shifting ice shelf, a frozen monument to bad tire selection. If you served in the US military in the 1970s or 80s, you probably have hearing loss, and you might blame this vehicle, the M561 Gama Goat. This 6x6 truck was an attempt to make the ultimate all-terrain vehicle. It features a unique articulating joint between the cab and the cargo bed, allowing the two halves to twist independently. This meant all 6 wheels could stay on the ground no matter how rough the terrain was, giving it exceptional grip on uneven surfaces. It was developed by the aircraft company Vought, and it was technically brilliant off-road. It could swim across rivers and it was airdroppable. But the soldiers absolutely hated it. Why? The engine. It used a 3-cylinder Detroit diesel 2-stroke engine mounted right behind the driver's head. It was screamingly loud. Without heavy-duty ear protection, you couldn't communicate with the passenger sitting next to you, let alone hear the radio. It was a sonic torture chamber on wheels. On top of the noise, the steering was tricky, and it required a special technique to drive safely without losing control. While it was an off-road champion, it was a maintenance nightmare and physically exhausting for the crew. It was eventually replaced by the Humvee, and nobody shed a tear to see the Goat go, except maybe the mechanics who admired its weird articulating engineering. It stands as a reminder that capability means nothing if the crew can't stand driving it. Number 9 is less of a truck and more of a physics experiment. Meet the Rolligon. In the 1950s, an inventor named William Albee saw Inuits in Alaska using inflated seal skins to drag heavy boats over soft snow. He realized that low pressure was the key to traction. He invented bag tires, massive soft rubber rollers driven by friction from top-mounted rollers rather than a central axle. This design allowed for a massive footprint that barely disturbed the ground. To prove how safe and gentle these tires were, Albee performed one of the most famous stunts in automotive history. He laid down on the ground and let a 5-ton Rolligon truck drive directly over him. Because the weight was spread out over such a huge area, the pressure on his body was less than a firm massage. He stood up, dusted himself off, and smiled. It was a dramatic demonstration of physics in action that shocked the military observers. The U.S. military tested the Rolligon extensively. It was incredible on sand, snow, and marshland because it didn't dig in, it floated on top. While it didn't become the main battle truck due to the vulnerability of the soft bags to enemy fire, the technology is still used today. You can find them on the north slope of Alaska for oil exploration, moving massive rigs across the delicate tundra without leaving a trace. It is the perfect example of a specialized tool for a specialized job. Finally, we end with the modern king of logistics, the Oshkosh HEMTT M977. If you see a U.S. military convoy today, you will see this beast. It is an 8A8 heavy tactical truck that serves as the absolute backbone of the U.S. Army supply line. It is not as weird looking as the ZIL 135, but its capability is staggering. Introduced in the 1980s, the HEMTT is designed to keep up with the Abrams tanks across any terrain the battlefield can throw at it. It is powered by a massive Detroit diesel or Caterpillar engine producing up to 500 horsepower. But the real magic is the suspension and the tires. It uses massive 53-inch Michelin tires and an independent suspension system that allows it to climb a 60% grade and ford water 4 feet deep. While experimental versions have tested futuristic diesel-electric hybrid drives, the standard fleet relies on pure, brute diesel torque to move heavy supplies, ammunition, and fuel to the front lines. It is highly modular. It can be a fuel tanker, a cargo hauler, a guided missile transporter, or a wrecker. It represents the pinnacle of military trucking evolution. It is the culmination of a century of learning from failures like the snow cruiser and successes like the KrAZ. It proves that in the modern military, boring reliability wins over bizarre experiments. The HEMTT might not have 2 engines or bag tires, but it gets the job done every single time. From the twin-engine Soviet Frankenstein to the American snow cruiser that couldn't handle snow, military history is full of brilliant and bizarre ideas. These machines show us that the quest for the ultimate off-road vehicle has taken humanity down some very strange paths. Now, I want to hear from you. Did I miss any weird trucks? Have you ever driven a Gama Goat and still have your hearing? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button and subscribe for more.